He didn't say I was holding him back. He said I was grounding. That was the word he chose. Like I was gravity, useful, invisible, not something anyone builds statues for. We were sitting at our kitchen table. I'd just handed him the updated investor pitch deck I had polished the night before, the same one he'd been avoiding, because design isn't his strength. He closed the file, tapped twice on the trackpad, then looked at me. "Rach," he said, "I've been thinking." That was how it always started. He said the company needed more risk, more edge, that the new VCs were looking for someone who thinks in bigger leaps, and that I was great at logistics, great at making things work after they were broken, great at bringing people back to earth. He smiled like it was a compliment. I stared at him. He wore the same hoodie from the accelerator, day sleeves, 2 long cuffs chewed. Except now he had a new watch, a gift from the board after Series A. That watch cost more than my first bonus at the agency where we met. "I'm not saying step away," he added quickly. "Just reposition. You've said you wanted time with your mom anyway, and the baby's due in 6 weeks." There it was, the soft landing, the folding chair exit wrapped in empathy. I nodded, because I knew what this was. Not cruelty, not malice, just a clean handover of power disguised as kindness. He kissed my forehead and said, "You've always been my sanity. Don't let this make things weird." Then he got up and walked into the den where 2 junior PMs were waiting on Zoom to discuss vision. I sat still for another 10 minutes, stared at the mug in front of me. It said, "Let's build something." He gave it to me when we filed the LLC 3 years ago. That night I couldn't sleep, not because I was angry, but because I'd seen it coming, the slow fading of my name from our calendar invites. The way he started calling it his company instead of our company during investor meetings. The fact that he'd asked me to stop posting on LinkedIn just until the messaging matures. I opened our cap table file, checked my share count, still there, technically. But everyone knows what non-operating co-founder means once the board comes in. It means you're lucky we kept you in the footer. 3 days later, I signed a revised agreement. New roles, new vesting, new titles. My lawyer read it twice and asked if I was sure. I'm sure, I said. Because I didn't want to fight for a seat at a table I helped build. I wanted to design the next one. The last thing Tom said before our signature meeting was, "You're still part of this, you know? You'll always be the person who kept the train on track." I smiled and thought, "You built the engine. I built the map. Let's see what happens when I stop sharing the coordinates." I left with a file folder, 1 USB drive, and a list of things I'd never say out loud, yet. It started on the floor of our 1-bedroom apartment. Tom sketched ideas on printer paper, and I wrote bullet points on the backs of grocery receipts. We didn't have a whiteboard. We had Sharpie's ramen and too much caffeine. He called it pre-seed energy. I called it Thursday. He had the spark, the charm, the kind of voice that made investors lean in even when the pitch was half-baked. I had the spreadsheets, the user personas, the workflows built in Notion before Notion was cool. He said I translated chaos into momentum. I said he made chaos sound exciting. It worked, for a while. We incorporated the LLC at the same coffee shop where we had our first date. He insisted we both sign the founding docs at the same time. Said 50-50 or nothing. I should have kept the napkin where he wrote that. Not because it was legally binding, but because it was the last time he saw us as even. When we got into the early stage accelerator, he told me to stay off the intro calls. "You're better behind the scenes," he said. "They want one voice, one story." I agreed, because I thought one voice meant ours. I handled hiring, sourced our first design contractor, wrote the onboarding docs, built the brand tone guide. When I pitched the idea of launching a content arm to educate users, he said, "That's why I keep you close. You think structurally." I should have known then. He didn't say strategically, he said structurally, like I was scaffolding. By Series A, I had moved from co-founder to operations lead. On paper, it looked clean. Internally, it meant no seat at the VC calls, no say in equity discussions, no votes in roadmap shifts. But he still came to me when things broke, when product engagement dropped, when 2 engineers threatened to walk out. When the board wanted to bring in an adult CRO, I fixed all of it, quietly, efficiently. Then stepped back again when the press came. I remember one investor dinner, back patio of a rooftop bar, string lights, classic funding night glow. He introduced me as the engine under the hood. They laughed. I smiled. Then he toasted to the future of Heron Labs, not Heron and Lane. Just him, just vision. I didn't say anything that night, just ordered a second glass of wine and memorized every face at the table. 2 of them would end up funding someone else I'd support later. But I didn't know that yet. 1 week before I signed the exit agreement, I opened our marketing roadmap, the one I'd started and tagged for feedback. I found a slide deck titled Brand Repositioning Final. All the language I'd drafted was there, refined, rearranged, with a new author line, Tom. He hadn't even changed the file name prefix. It still started with RLQ1 pitch. I didn't message him, didn't comment. I exported the file, saved it in a folder called Proof Not Worth Arguing. It's not that I wasn't ambitious, it's that I thought building something together meant I didn't have to prove it. Until I did. The apartment I moved into had no view, just a brick wall, 2 feet from the bedroom window. It was the kind of wall people hated. I loved it. It didn't pretend to be more than it was. I bought 1 chair, 1 lamp, no TV. I brought the coffee mug Tom gave me when we launched the company. Then on the second night, I dropped it. Didn't mean to, didn't stop it either. I swept it up in silence. My days were routine. Wake up, walk, job board, emails, freeze meal, sleep. Not because I didn't have options, but because I didn't want momentum. I wanted containment. People texted at first, not to check in, but to clarify sides. Hope you're doing okay. You know I respect you both. I think what you did was really graceful. Let's catch up when things aren't weird. I archived them all, created a folder in my inbox, Diplomatic Ghosts. One night, 3 weeks in, I got an email. Subject, Hi from Nina, remember me. She was an intern we hired briefly during our pre-seed sprint. Sharp, overprepared, dismissed by Tom for trying too hard to sound smart. I liked her. She wrote, I know this is random, but I've started something. It's rough. Half-coded, half-concept. But I keep hearing your voice in my head when I pitch. The one that said, solve the right pain, not just the obvious one. I'd love your eyes on this if you're open, no pressure. Just thought of you. I read it 3 times, then clicked the link. A janky landing page, minimal UI. But the message clearer than 90% of the pitch decks I'd reviewed for Tom. I replied the next morning, short, simple. I remember you. Show me what you're trying to build. We met at a bookstore cafe with terrible Wi-Fi. She brought a 3-page roadmap printed on recycled office paper. I brought nothing but a pen. For 2 hours, I asked questions. Not to poke holes, but to make sure the foundation had space. She didn't dodge, didn't flinch, didn't overcompensate. She said, I want to build something small but solid. Not flashy. I nodded. That was exactly what the market was missing. She didn't ask for funding. She asked for feedback. That's how I knew she had a shot. I spent the next 2 weeks helping her shape the core thesis, rewriting the onboarding loop, redefining the core metric, pulling benchmarks from the years I spent propping up Tom's so-called disruption. I used a different email, signed documents with a new legal entity Jordan helped me set up, Saltwell Consulting LLC. No ties to Rachel Lane, no Google Trail, just clean input. At week 4, I told her she was ready to raise pre-seed. She blinked. Me like, you think I could? I smiled. You don't need to raise yet, but you need to know that you can. Later that night, I looked at our old cap table again. My name was still there, dormant, passive, reduced. I closed the tab, then opened a spreadsheet. New header Nina, Project Orbit. Line 1, Strategic Non-Voting Advisory Convertible. I wasn't building revenge, I was building leverage. I never called it revenge, not even in my notes. I called it architecture because that's what it was. Not emotional, not reactive, just structure. Nina's team worked out of a borrowed co-working space above a boxing gym. 3 engineers, 1 UX grad, and a front-end dev who still worked weekends at a vape shop. I met with them every Tuesday at 8 a.m., never on Zoom, always in person, always under the radar, no Slack, no Notion, Just printed docs, annotated PDFs, and one burner inbox. And they didn't ask why I wanted it low profile. They assumed I had something to protect. I did, but not what they thought. I taught them how to forecast churn, how to split growth tiers, how to write one slide that answered 5 investor doubts before they even asked. Don't impress, I told Nina. Anticipate. She listened, not blindly but sharply. She pushed back on ideas I floated, offered angles I hadn't considered. That's how I knew she was ready. By week 8, I could see what we'd built. It wasn't just a startup, it was a threat. To the exact slice of market Tom once said wasn't big enough to chase. He was wrong. We were proof. The product was cleaner than his, faster, smaller, more emotionally intelligent because it came from someone who actually listened to the users instead of pitching over them. The UI was light. The copy was real. The value prop wasn't change the world. It was do one painful thing 10x easier. I brought in 2 angels to back her pre-seed. Both women. Both had been overlooked by Tom in previous rounds. They didn't forget. They didn't need reminding. We didn't run ads, didn't chase press. But the usage numbers grew, quietly, organically, precisely. One day, Nina sent me a screenshot. It was from Product Hunt, a comment on their soft beta launch. This solves the exact thing we've been hacking around for 18 months. Where the hell were you during Series B? I smiled, because I knew exactly who wrote it. The syntax, the tone. It was one of Tom's ex-leads, the one he said was too slow to scale. That week, I updated the doc, orbit phase to T2. Acceleration. Target secure 5 high-retention users from Tom's ICP. Goal launch the feature he deprioritized 9 months ago. Tactic convert skepticism into retention case studies. Still no press, still no noise, only traction. Nina asked one night, "Why are you helping me like this?" I paused, then said, "Because you're building what I never got to finish." She blinked, didn't pry. She didn't need to know the rest, because it wasn't about Tom. It was about the system that lets someone like him use someone like me to build a ladder and then say, "You're not ambitious. You're just practical." I was practical. And now I was building something practical enough to dismantle him. The first overlap came in week 11. Nina forwarded me a demo request. Name Kevin S. Company T, redacted. Title Product Ops Integration Team. I recognized the email domain. I'd helped secure it 2 years ago in a cold outreach blitz. Tom dismissed as not worth the burn. They were now trying our beta. Nina was cautious. She asked, "Should we approve the trial? Might be risky." I said, "You don't win by hiding. You win by being too useful to ignore." She approved it. 3 days later, Kevin wrote, "Your onboarding UX is 6x smoother than what we're currently running. Please don't get acquired before I can convince my team." We didn't reply. We just watched. By month 4 more, enterprise accounts from Tom's ICP signed up for extended pilots. 2 of them had churned from his tool in Q2, citing slow roadmap velocity and lack of founder touch. I'd heard those phrases before. I used to write the responses Tom never read. His company launched a new feature. It was reactive, poorly tested, buggy. We launched a counter version 1 week later, smaller but elegantly modular. Users noticed. They always do. Even when they don't say it out loud. Nina was invited to speak at a private founder dinner, hosted by a fund we both knew. She texted me. They said I sound like someone they should have backed 2 years ago. I didn't answer right away. Then wrote they didn't miss, they just weren't looking in the right direction yet. Tom was still everywhere online, posting thought pieces, sharing hard-won founder truths, launching a newsletter. He used phrases like, "Leadership is letting go of what got you here." I used to edit his copy. Now I just copied and pasted it into a file labeled Recycled Messaging V2021, and then came the leak. Not public, just VC side chatter. One investor who had passed on Nina during her early outreach now circled back via intro from a friend. He called her product surgical, called her team unexpectedly sharp, said, "You're cleaning up quietly, huh?" She told me on the phone, "I think they're scared of us now." I said, "Good, but don't slow down. They haven't figured out who trained you yet." 1 week later, a recruiter from Tom's org reached out to one of Nina's engineers, said they were restructuring teams and wanted fresh blood. We took the call, not to leave, to listen. They shared their roadmap, mentioned pain points, Admitted internal churn, said we're struggling with alignment. I almost laughed, because alignment had always been the excuse. The reason I was too grounded, the reason I was not ambitious enough. Now their own alignment was unraveling. I sent Mike, my lawyer, a message. Prep the convertible note agreement for Orbit Holdings. Tier 2 entry. He replied, "You're taking equity now." I said, "No, I'm taking position." That night, I watched an investor roundtable video. Tom was on screen. Someone asked, "What keeps you up at night as a founder?" He said, "I don't fear competitors. I fear irrelevance." I didn't take notes. I just whispered, "Then you're right to fear me." The message came late. Encrypted email. No subject line. Just a name at the end. Brent. Tom's former co-founder, the one he parted ways with before Series A. Official reason, cultural misalignment. Unofficial reason. Brent questioned Tom's obsession with control. He paid for it. Tom rewrote the founding story, erased Brent's name from pitch decks, told people Brent was a good guy who wasn't built for scale. Now 2 years later, Brent wanted to talk. His email said, "I've seen what you're doing. I recognize the patterns. They're yours, Coffee." I didn't reply right away. I forwarded the message to Mike. He wrote back, "You're ready to play offense now." Brent looked older, not broken, just sanded down. He said hi, didn't smile, then handed me a folder. Inside user data market overlaps slide decks from recent investor updates at Tom's company. Nothing illegal, just revealing. His new CFO's leaking, Brent said. Not intentionally, she just shares too much in safe spaces. I raised an eyebrow. He smirked. She thinks I'm still harmless. We sat in silence for a while. Then Brent said, "I've watched him make noise for 3 years." You made no noise, and I still felt the pressure. I didn't answer. He continued, "I'm not here to get even. I'm here because you build structure, and structure is louder than ego if you're patient." I nodded. Finally asked, "What do you want?" He leaned forward. "I want in. I want to back your hand, quietly, legally. And when this lands, I want a seat at the table." He never let us build. I consulted Mike. We created a holding shell to allow Brent to contribute intelligence and limited capital into Nina's Series A round without name exposure. We called it Drift Beacon Holdings, just another clean signature in the system. Meanwhile, Tom started circling, I heard through a friend of a friend. He asked a board advisor, "Does Orbit have any ex-employee links?" He asked his recruiter, "Any chance our old ops person is back in the game?" He asked his lawyer, "What are the terms for injunctive discovery on advisory roles?" That last one made me smile, because when men like Tom get scared, they go legal first. They don't rebuild, they retaliate. He sent Nina a message via one of his VCs, soft but pointed. "Let's explore collaboration. You're in our adjacency." No need for unnecessary friction. She texted me. "Is this a threat?" I replied. "No, it's a white flag disguised as a handshake." We ignored it. We kept shipping. One night, Tom posted on LinkedIn, "Greatness requires humility. The market doesn't reward pride, it rewards precision." I almost laughed. He once told me humility is just a branding tactic for people who can't dominate. But I didn't comment. I copied the post, pasted it into a doc called Final Performance Act, because I could tell he was preparing to spin the loss as wisdom. Brent sent one last message. Before we executed our next step. "Do you want to finish this, or just prove you could have?" I wrote back, "Both." It happened fast, because it had to. Tom's company was burning cash. They'd overhired, overpromised, underdelivered. Their last round came with performance clauses they couldn't hit. The board wasn't angry, they were bored, and boredom in venture capital is lethal. One of his lieutenants reached out to Brent, off the record, said they were spinning off one of their underperforming product lines, said, "We need a clean exit, quiet quick. Market's weird right now." Brent called me the same night. I was folding laundry. He said, "It's the slice you architected 3 years ago. I already knew." I had the original flowchart still saved timestamped, annotated and ignored at the time. We moved through Drift Beacon Holdings, no connection to Nina, no visible trace of me. Mike handled the structure, a clean purchase, low 7 figures, straightforward paperwork. The seller thought we were a niche SaaS consolidator with zero interest in visibility. They weren't wrong. Tom didn't attend the signing, he delegated it. Standard ops, until one line caught legal's attention. Clause 12.4 IP transfer acknowledgement, referencing a legacy architecture plan titled RL Stack. Someone in his office flagged it. They emailed him. He emailed back, that's probably a dev artifact. Greenlight it. He didn't read the name, just the initials. At 3:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, Tom's assistant submitted digital signature. The system pinged complete. Mike texted me, signed, sealed, acquired, no confetti, no champagne, no press release, just a quiet PDF. A clean URL redirect, a new routing rule in the CRM, and my initials inside the metadata of the thing he just sold for less than the budget of his last rebrand video. Brent and I met that evening. We didn't toast. We reviewed user migration logistics. He said we finally own what we built. I corrected him. We own what they wasted. Nina didn't know the full story. She didn't need to. All she knew was her competitor just exited a feature set. And she had a new investor willing to accelerate roadmap support. She asked me, why did they back out so fast? I said, because they were too busy pretending to lead to notice when they stopped owning. That weekend, I got a message from an unknown number. I heard you were involved in the acquisition. If it's true, you win. You always were the better architect. I didn't respond, but I read it twice, not for meaning, just for rhythm. He said you win, but I wasn't playing to win. I was playing to finish the game he thought only he could start. I forwarded the message to Mike, subject for records only, then opened a new spreadsheet. Label Phase 3, Ownership versus Optics. Row 1, Who gets the microphone? Row 2, Who gets the infrastructure? Only one matters. The acquisition didn't make TechCrunch. It didn't need to. It made payroll. It made retention. It made space. Nina's company integrated the product within 6 weeks, improved the back end, polished the UX, rebuilt the marketing narrative, not as a pivot, as a quiet correction. Brent took a step back after integration. He didn't want to lead, just contribute. I respected that. Some builders don't need titles, they just need to stop being erased. Tom didn't reach out again. No more emails, no letters, no podcasts hinting at betrayal, just silence. I assumed he pivoted, started something new, maybe rebranded, maybe wrote a thread about the lessons that shape you. That's fine, let him shape. I had moved on to building. With Mike, I launched a small initiative, not loud, not Rachel Lane Ventures. Just a link with no headshots, no testimonials, no adjectives. Second draft, that's what I called it. A micro fund and advisory circle for women who were edited out, talked over step back, for personal reasons, or simply forgotten. We didn't ask for pitch decks. We asked, what did they say you weren't? Then what have you done anyway? I met a woman who was removed from her startup at 6 months pregnant. Another who was asked to take a softer tone with her engineers. Another whose co-founder trademarked the product in his name while she was in chemo. I didn't coach them. I gave them tools. And I told them one thing, you're not broken. You were strategically underestimated. Sometimes I wonder if Tom ever pieced it all together. If he clicked the metadata, traced the IP, found my initials in the codebase, or in Nina's first press blurb where she thanked a silent strategist who taught me how to build quietly. I hope he did, but I doubt it. People like him rarely learn backward. They only race forward until the map ends. On the 1-year mark of the acquisition, I received a note, printed, mailed, unmarked envelope. Inside, we were wrong. You were never not ambitious. You were just bigger than our version of it. No signature, just that. I folded it once, filed it under not needed for records. The next morning, I walked past my daughter's daycare. A mother in front of me was reading a blog on her phone. I caught the headline, Why One Founder said no to funding and built her way anyway. It was Nina. I kept walking, didn't click, didn't need to, because I didn't want the microphone. I wanted the architecture. And now it was holding, without applause, without noise, without him. He told me I wasn't ambitious. I didn't argue. I just signed the next chapter from a title page he never thought I'd own.